So, hi everyone, I'm Patrick. I'm the CEO of Cortirio. We're developing portable brain imaging to diagnose brain injuries at the point of care. We're a proud O2H portfolio company, and thanks to Simon for having us. So, as you'll probably know, strokes are a very big problem. About a quarter of us in the room will end up having one. And you probably also know that time is vital when you're treating stroke. So every 15 minutes that goes by, that's a 4% less chance of a good outcome. So we want to treat patients quickly. And there's lots of points in the clinical pathway where there are delays. And we can help out at multiple of those points. The way to go into a bit of detail on one of those points. So there are different types of strokes, and different stroke centers are capable of treating these different types. So we're going to talk about the strokes that happen in the large vessels. And what currently happens is the ambulance picks you up, takes you to the nearest hospital, you get scanned, they realize you should have gone to a different hospital, then they have to transfer you, but you get more imaging, and finally you might get your treatment if they're in time. But this can cause hours of delays. What we're talking about is putting a device in an ambulance that allows paramedics to know which hospital to take you to and get you there first time. And what this means is that many more patients can get the life-saving treatment that they need. The way we do that is by making a portable, wearable headset that shines light through the head and maps blood to give clinicians the information they need to do diagnosis. The things we're measuring are blood volume and oxygenation. So these are the parameters that clinicians really care about when they're assessing the patient's brain. And most of the measures they have at the minute are indirect. So they'll look at the time for the blood to go through, but that's not really telling them what they want to know. Whereas we can give detailed information, and we can give it throughout the clinical pathways. You get a video history, not just a snapshot. As mentioned, the way that we do this is by shining infrared light through the head, and we do this at lots of points over the head. And by doing this at multiple distances, you can get down to depth in the head, so we can produce a 3D image of blood volume and oxygenation in the head. We don't get all the way through, so we only get the outside bit of the head, but if you imagine the outside 3.5 centimeters of a CT perfusion scan, that's essentially what we're giving the clinicians, which is gold standard information on diagnosing the types of strokes that are done in these specialist hospitals. So we've got this very nice shining demo of what the content of the device will look like. It's not currently looking like that. It's a bit more scrappy and prototype in a minute. But as this is designed to be modular, very easy to update and change as we go on. But we have tested it in a hospital. So we've got wearable prototype. We've validated it as good as you're ever going to get on healthy patients. We've got granted patents. We've got health economics that show that if we can get this into the market, it's going to be cost effective. So our next stage is taking this onto patients in a clinical study. So please do not try this at home. However, we have done some testing on our volunteers that we really should anonymize. So essentially, if you were to compress your carotid artery, you'd essentially cause the same pattern of deoxygenation as you'd get in a large vessel occlusion stroke. These are the ones that are done in these specialist hospitals, and this is the table where people are treated. We're checking this with ultrasound, and what we see is this really nice pattern of deoxygenation. So this is essentially normal brain. This is deoxygenated brain. I did this without having symptoms, so this is probably a much smaller signal than you'd see in a real stroke, but it is the same pattern of deoxygenation. So if we can pick this up, it's a really good indication that we'll be able to do stroke in patients. I apologize if I'm seeming a little spaced. I've just come back from the US where we were exhibiting with Medtronic. We went to the Society of Neurointerventional Surgery conference, which is one big global stroke conferences. Spoke to a lot of clinicians. This is a clinician very gamely trying on our working prototype. We did a couple of little tricks. We couldn't quite do cross compression. You don't get sued. But we were able to do some light touch stuff and sort of show off the technology. So we built some really good connections, and we've already got meetings and ongoing relationships that we hope to use to set up our future clinical studies in the US. The way that the commercial side of this would work is essentially hardware as a service model. So we'd consign the devices and get paid every time the device gets used. This lines up with reimbursement in multiple different countries. And there's very good margins on this. So very conservatively put in $350 per use, which is roughly the cost of an MR perfusion scan. But VisAI recently got a extra payment so that when their device or their technology is used in the stroke clinical pathway, the hospitals can claim an extra $1,000. So, there's definitely scope for that to be a bit higher. In terms of our next steps, so there is a bit more work to do to get the prototype clinical ready, but that's less of a tech advance, more of a making sure that it survives the clinical environment. Alongside that, we've got some pre-regulatory work to do. Once we run a clinical study, we'll do our regulatory submissions. And from this point, we'll be able to start selling the device. Now, the claims at that point will be fairly light touch, but what we'll then do is aim for a study that's funded by the FDA and CMS in the US, which would do large-scale cost effectiveness to demonstrate the sort of real-world utility and drive adoption. And so this is some of early first sales. And the way we get there is by doing this early clinical study, which we have already set up sites in Barcelona, London, and Singapore to do. So to get to market, we need about 5 million. We might stage that with 1 to 2 million raised now, depending on the conversations, but we're having those early conversations now. And then, there's steps in place to grow and scale further beyond that. We have a really wonderful team. So I highlighted our management team here. We also have a team of 5 engineers plus some ops support and across the board. At our next raise, we'll be hiring some software engineers, some regulatory people, and some people to help doing the early commercial / clinical work. So if you'd like to chat, you can book a meeting here or get in touch. Thanks.
Data to share to show how
if I could have the slides back. So when you say data show how
effective you are at predicting or diagnosing specific stroke.
Okay.
It predicts, but do you have the data?
So I suppose for the cross compression test, which I suppose is our best example, we've only been able to do that on a limited number of people so far. So I suppose so far we've had a 100% success rate every time we've done that, but that is a limited number. So not
waiting for the clinical trial. So we basically want to raise money to fund a clinical trial to get some.
I suppose data. The way I'd summarize what we've got now is we've got the data that if I clicker's not working. The data I showed is essentially you show that to a clinician and it looks one-to-one what they would expect. Now that doesn't tell you how many, if you were to run it on wider population, how many of those would it work on? Are there any issues getting it on? All that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what the clinical trial is.
What's the regulatory now from where you are to getting the book?
So essentially we would 510K based on 3 block centers. These are devices that are used to monitor patients during anesthesia. That wouldn't immediately allow us to do to make sort of grand claims about diagnosing stroke, but it gets us on market and allows people to start using it and allows us to set up this FDA-funded clinical study. And then with that, you can then make wide claims and get a sensitivity specificity at scale.
So you said FDA-funded clinical studies. That's something that would show you something apart from that.
Yeah, exactly. So James is one of our board members, and
rated board member.
And thank you for that. So essentially, if you have a new device that can do exciting things, the FDA can compel Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to pay for your device on a clinical study. So Heartfelt just got a £30 million deal to be able to use their device on the clinical study. So we're trying to tread exactly the same path.
Fantastic. Any questions from me?
How do you ensure that you don't damage any other cells in the brain?
So we're shining very little light through the head. So go outside, you're probably getting more light. So we're not doing it at therapeutic levels.
Okay. And you're only seeing superficial blood vessels?
I phrase it as we're seeing superficial tissue. So what we're probing is more average oxygenation of the tissue rather than sort of highlighting the individual vessels, but that's exactly what we want to do for this update.
What other sort of data can you collect? Is it just for stroke, or imagine if you've got one of these on the head and collecting all sorts of data?
Yeah, so the other main thing we want to do is traumatic brain injuries, so bleeds on the outside of the head, so subdural and extradural hematoma. So yeah, because we can do structural imaging, we're also providing that as well. There's lots of other stuff, so we did win some funding on dementia as well, and assessing some biomarkers over time. That's very, let's say, early stage, and we'll need much more evidence to get to market, but yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at.
The ambulance guy was at the one you could debate, so you're talking to him. He's saying that Aaron.
Okay.
He wants one of your.
Yeah. So one of our clinical advisors, Wilson, is he works with London Air Ambulance and is there sort of there was their clinical director, I think it's moved on, but is there another?
I was just going to ask how you got light into the head in Resco.
Yeah, so if you imagine shining a torch through your hand, we're actually fairly transparent to light. The problem is that we scatter quite strongly. So that's the reason why we shine the light in there. It doesn't come out there. That's the reason we can't get all the way through the head, but you do get through the head. So this technique's been used in academia for sort of 30 years to monitor like brain activations. They do cool things like saying, if you get really angry or if you
You should try my son. I think you can get it through one there.
We're always looking for new ways to test it.
So what's the patent if it's been available for so long? What's the patent?
Yeah.
What's the extra special element of your
So
being copied?
So the existing technology, the way it works, it's essentially like, or they can only really see changes over time. So it's a video where you only see changes. So it's like a Jurassic Park T-Rex. If you don't move, it can't see you. So what we want to be able to do is to take a snapshot and take a photo as well as provide a video. And so that's the patent that enables us to do that. And then there's a couple of other things as well.
Actually, I have a couple of questions. So you can detect both ischemia and hemorrhage.
Yes, as long as the hemorrhage is superficial enough for us to see it, yeah.
And my other question is, so, usually when people have strokes, they either do a CT scan or an MRI, which are obviously point of care. But if this is a different technology, why not also try to have a massive device that's much better than just a point of care that competes with CT scan and MRI?
Sorry, so is the question, why don't we do infrared imaging that could compete with?
No, because you're doing it as a point of care, right?
Yeah.
But is there no scope or I don't know much about technology to say, well, we can actually build something that is also a large machine that has better sensitivity, specificity, but it's just sitting in hospitals and competing with CT as an alternative to a CT scan or MRI.
Okay, so what we are planning to do is to put the same device in hospitals as well, and not necessarily compete with CT.
Compete as an alternative.
But yeah, provide extra information around that. And because what we do is provide oxygenation, blood oxygenation volume, that's different to what the signals you'd measure in CT perfusion, which are things like blood flow and time that the dye takes to go through your system. Whereas what clinicians really care about is the brain oxygenated. So we're providing more direct measure. So yeah, there are definitely things we can do in the hospital, especially in and around thrombectomy. So the surgery to treat these large strokes that I've sort of alluded to is it's transformed stroke care, and all of the pathways are reconfigured to provide this. It's absolutely wonderful, but still in anywhere between 25 and 67% of the cases, it doesn't work as well as it should. And the reason why that probably is that you're either causing more damage when you're in there, or you're not getting all of the clot out. And that's exactly what we should be able to measure. So yeah, we're really excited about the use of it.
Thank you, Patrick.